Design is a process which helps us bring together the Australian curriculum and the Teaching for Effective Learning framework, the TEFL. We know that our students come to us with prior knowledge, interests and understandings. Learning design helps us think about how we can build on this to engage and stretch our learners. This process is made up of 6 key ideas for us to consider. These are posed as key questions to guide and support our thinking as we design learning for our students. The 6 key ideas of learning design are: what is the intended learning and why is it important? What do our learners bring? What could the intended learning look like at this level? What evidence will enable us to assess the intended learning? How will we engage, challenge and support their learning? Design the teaching and learning plan. We know learning design isn't a linear process, but we found it useful to go through each idea one at a time so we could understand how they all fit together. In this video, we'll follow one teacher's experience using learning design with Australian curriculum history. Peter is a Year 4-5 teacher from O'Sullivan Beach Primary School.
Some of the electric lights here.
I've been working with the new history curriculum for a while now, and I think it presents some great opportunities for some really engaging and challenging learning for students. And that's why I was really keen to follow your experiences using the curriculum for the first time to design learning for your Year 4 and 5 class. This focus on history came at a really good time for you, didn't it?
Yes, there was the 175th anniversary of Proclamation of South Australia, and there was a lot of local projects going on. The council had put up a timeline and photos near the jetty, and the kids had seen this. They were talking about it in class, and from what they were saying and the questions they were asking, you could see they didn't quite understand time and how things had changed over time.
So what was your first reaction when you went online and looked at the curriculum?
I was surprised that it wasn't more so just about facts and dates. It was more about the history questions and the skills of inquiry. And I was happy that questions like why did Europeans settle in Australia, I could engage the kids far more rather than just covering dates and facts.
Were you thinking at all about the cross-curriculum priorities?
They did link in well where you could cover the Year 4 and Year 5, having the composite class, and linking into the questions from both, how they covered what we were talking about.
What we really want to make sure is that we're looking at it from both the Aboriginal perspective, from the local, so our local environment, which is obviously around Adelaide and the Kaurna people.
It's very useful to be able to work with other teachers so we can reflect and bounce off ideas, come up with a shared understanding of what we hope to achieve. We're trying to look at history through a detective's eyes, trying to look for evidence, be a bit more critical and get a deeper understanding. The first thing I'd ask is,
as you were looking through the curriculum, you were obviously thinking about your own students. Did it fit with what you wanted them to learn and how they learn?
It did fit really well for them to get a better understanding of how and why Sullivan Beach has changed over time, what's made it the place that it is. Using inquiry-based learning in a historical sense was a bit new to me, and it allowed the kids to go deeper. I wanted to develop their empathy and have a better understanding for the difficulties that their settlers would have faced. I was hoping it would transfer into their everyday lives, empathy and respect towards each other, and also empathy towards the Aboriginal people and how it would have impacted on their lives. What are you trying to ask?
Why did the white people settle here?
And you've asked the people in your group?
Yeah.
It was obvious that there were a lot of misconceptions. They were linking the European settlers to convicts and thinking that Captain Cook was part of South Australia's history. Even one of the students had talked about the Egyptian pyramids being built at the same time that settlers first came to South Australia. And the inquiry-based learning related really well to the local area, and concepts of the history curriculum could be applied so we could learn about the local history, and I wanted the kids to see that Australian history did happen in our local area. So they turned this into a roller skating ring.
You said you had identified a bit of confusion about the passing of time, so what did you do to check out this understanding a bit more?
Put a timeline up in the classroom, and it was good to see how the kids responded and what they were talking about in relation to the timeline. It was a good way to check out their understanding and their concept of passing time.
Looking at the timeline,
I realised there was still a bit of confusion about the idea of passing of time, so we needed to relate it to their own lives. And we decided to take them out, get them to arrange themselves in chronological order of their age.
In order. I'm at the start. So the oldest person in the class apart from me will be first here.
3001.
Three of you, the oldest.
So it showed they didn't have a good grasp of the concept yet, so we needed to slow down, make sure they had that understanding.
2000.
I'd like to share a book that I found has lots of old pictures of the local area. Well, the students always loved hearing stories about how things had changed during my lifetime, so once I brought in some photos, their curiosity got going and it lifted their level of engagement so we could get some deeper learning.
All of this thinking gave you a really good understanding of what you wanted the students to learn about history, but what were you wanting them to learn about themselves as learners?
For all of them to be able to work with each other and learn from, but also learn together. So how to learn as a team and how they could stretch each other and challenge themselves to go deeper with their understandings. At the same time, I was able to be involved in the new media program where the kids were making documentaries on the concept then and now. So that fitted in perfectly using technology for a purpose because they were able to get local footage and share and communicate their learning of the local history in an effective medium. I went to the achievement standards at the bottom of each curriculum in the year levels. I've got a year 4-5 classroom, so I went to the 3, 4, 5 and 6 to get a good idea of either side. It was good because I noticed there was a natural flow between the year 4 and 5, so I was able to challenge my year 4s by sequencing events in a chronological order, but the year 5s to challenge further because they had to do that in a sense of using a timeline. The achievement standards were a good place to start, but then I needed to go to the content descriptions and elaborations so I could get a greater understanding of the detail of what they were, sort of unpack the achievement standards so I knew what the learning was going to look like. It was easier to work with other teachers so we could get a shared understanding of what the learning would look like at each level.
Actually seeing all these different groups and actually starting to have an understanding that we had so many different Aboriginal diverse groups in just South Australia.
Will this be an ongoing conversation?
It will be ongoing. It also worked especially well when the students shared their documentaries with other classes. The teachers were able to see the students' documentaries and give me feedback on the quality of learning, and it also helps us to increase our shared understanding of our expectations. I knew why I wanted my students to work together in groups so they could collaborate effectively and stretch their learning, but I needed a clear structured way to do this.
A good place to look is in the TEFL guide. In here there are lots of great strategies and ideas for getting started on using group work as a way of getting students to learn together.
I wanted to be really clear with the expectations, so we worked together to jointly come up with an assessment sheet with the criteria. That sheet was good to use when I was talking to the class or groups to help them know what their expectations were. Using that as an assessment tool did guide their learning and help them through the learning activity. It says inquiry question first. Have you used an inquiry question in your
Yes.
movie? Yes. What is your inquiry question?
Why is Onkaparinga River the Women's River?
It's important to keep checking constantly of their understanding. Example of this was when we were talking about historical terms and we were talking about settlement. It was evident that some of the children didn't have the same understanding of settlement. They might have thought settle down, and we had to make sure that that historical term was understood. So we're checking in and making sure so that we can go further with their learning.
No, fabric. Animals. Because they won't hunt animals and take animal skin, so...
The documentaries were a good final product, but it was more so the planning and their drafts that allowed me to check in their understanding and to help them along the way. So with some groups I was able to give them the support they needed to help their understanding, but with other groups I was able to challenge them further and stretch their learning throughout the activity.
I heard the Onkaparinga River is the Women's River. I wonder why. This is a job for us. We can help. Let's find out the answer. Hey Cheryl, what are you up to? I found out why they've called it the Women's River. Really? I found out that they they used to teach the girls at the river mouth.
Oh, really?
What sort of lessons did they teach you? Just about life and how to be a woman.
We shared the movies, the documentaries of all the different classes in the school, so they're able to get constructive feedback from other students. We also, as a class, used the 2 stars and a wish process, so they were able to give each other constructive feedback.
It had humour in it and it actually looked like it was real. It didn't look like a real documentary because of the humour and all. Yeah. Humour is supposed to be 2 stars too.
The pictures that I brought in were collected from the internet and books were of the area, some old, some new. Straight away the kids started looking at them and their discussions were really rich. They were talking about places they recognised and then they started asking questions about the pictures. Because I wanted to work collaboratively, first we did a lot of talking and sharing of the questions, and I put up a wonder wall so we could look and we could see them and we could add new questions as they arose. Once we'd done this, then we moved into working in groups where they had to negotiate and decide an inquiry question that would generate future learning and give them a deep understanding of the historical concepts of the area.
Why is the Onkaparinga River the women's river?
Oh, yeah.
We'll vote on them too.
Once they had decided on an inquiry question, then they went off and started doing research with books on the internet and also thinking of people they could interview to find out more information. I noticed how much more focused and purposeful in what they were doing because they had agreed on the task together and they were jointly curious. It was like they had a shared curiosity of their inquiry question they wanted to work on together. We kept the timeline up and the students kept adding dates, information and pictures up there as we went. It helped them put everything together chronologically and helped them make connections between the events and the people and the times. The timeline ended up being a really important tool. It helped me show the students the 2 different periods in time of the Year 4 and Year 5 curriculum, and it helped me to show them how it fits in together.
Now that's a really good idea, so you need to share that with your group, please. In the movies you're going to show what you've learned about the local history and the local area.
The students knew they were going to be making documentaries to show their learning about history of the local area, about the time of European settlement. I wanted them to be able to use cameras, but I didn't want that to take away from the learning of their inquiry questions. So they needed the skills of how to use a camera effectively, but also how to communicate using a documentary focus.
Now the best way to do a storyboard is to get a piece of paper and just fold it in halves, then into halves again, then into halves again, and you've got 8 sections.
That was when I invited Kim in from the new media team, so he could show the children how to use the equipment, but also how to make an effective documentary.
Just write in what's happening.
Now put a picture up on the board. It's a picture of a local area. And I want us to talk about how we can use a picture as a source of information. So I want to show you what sort of questions you can ask when you're looking at a picture.
I wanted the students to use a range of sources and also to use primary sources. We had a lot of photographs in the class and I wanted the students to be able to see them as a way that we could find out information. They were a good starting point for me to explicitly teach how we could use a photograph as a primary source of information. So I went through a lesson where I was interrogating the picture, speaking out loud about the questions I would ask so I could find out a deep range of information.
What can you tell me about your photos?
I think this is when the jetty broke.
I wanted the students to ask questions that would help them to learn new information from looking at old photographs. Some of them were asking very shallow questions like, oh, what are they wearing? Where I was hoping to lead them towards questions that, why are they wearing those clothes? Why are those clothes different from clothes that we wear now? We came up with a checklist that the children were able to use when they were working through the photographs. It helped them to explain the way they were working with the photographs. It was also a good way for me to continue to check what complex thinking they were using when they were looking at the photos. Then I set up lots of opportunities for the students to be able to practice this new skill.
Take 1 picture each.
At this stage of the learning design, I needed to plan out my sequence of activities, collect the resources and get organised. It was like I was putting all of my thinking together that I'd done so that I could have what I wanted the students to achieve and how I was going to go about it.
I feel successful in this topic because I've learned how to film more, and I've learnt more about history and all,
So it's good
and about this local area. So I got three things out of this one topic.